The second pick in the 2002 NBA Draft, the Chicago Bulls select Jay Williams from Duke University.
Today's guest was an All-American point guard at Duke as a sophomore when he and Naismith Award winner Shane Battier led Duke to the 2001 NCAA basketball championship. As a junior, he was the Naismith Award winner himself. He was selected second by the Chicago Bulls in the NBA draft, but after just 1 year, his career came crashing down in a terrifying motorcycle accident. It took a while, but now he has two different flourishing careers as a college basketball analyst for ESPN and as a businessman. I welcome a man, and you talk about the what ifs in life, Jay Williams. The what ifs. What if you had played for the Chicago Bulls for 12 or 13 years, like Michael Jordan or something like that? What have you thought about that about 1,000 times over the last 10 years?
I thought about it a lot more at the beginning. There wouldn't be a D Rose, I can tell you that. A Derrick Rose. I'm a little bit more competitive. I don't think I would have let that happen. But I don't know. Earlier, I thought a lot about who I would have been as a man at 32 years old. You know, a lot of my friends are going on their 11th, 12th, 13th season in the league, and I don't know what kind of man I would have been. Could I have been somebody that got lost in the limelight? Maybe. Or I maybe could have been that person that I thought I was going to be, which was win world titles and, you know, hopefully get an MVP here or there and just be happy and have a family. So who knows how things would have played out.
Let's talk about your college basketball and Coach K. You were an only child growing up in New Jersey. Your parents stressed education. I mean, for anybody, and I think of all, in your resume, one of the most impressive things among many was that you finished Duke University in 3 years. The first athlete to do that.
Yeah, and I get a lot of that, all that actually, from my mother and my father. My dad worked here in the city for a very long time with American Express, worked for AT&T. My mother was a guidance counselor, and I watched her go back to school and become a principal later on in life. So education has always been the primary focus of our family. You know, unfortunately for me, just because you have a good education doesn't stop you from making a nut decision sometimes. You know, i.e. my motorcycle accident, it happens. But yeah, I look back on that time in my life. My sophomore year, we won a championship. Yeah. And it was an amazing experience. I was faced with a very difficult decision. You know, do you leave school early and become a top pick in the draft, or do you stay in school?
You could have left after your freshman year. Right?
Yeah, well, freshman year, I still would have been late first round, but my sophomore year, they were talking about me being the #1 pick in the draft. And my mom and dad were great. They're like, let's sit down and talk about the pros and the cons of each, you know, situation, pros and cons of staying, pros and cons of leaving. And at the end, Coach K said a line to me that I'll never forget. He's like, I just dare you to be different. I dare you not to be the norm. You always talk about blazing your own path and being a pioneer, and this is an opportunity for you to do so.
And he wasn't saying that to keep you on the team either.
No, I think it was the fact that he allowed me, my family and he allowed me to make the decision. And that was one of the first times that I, as a man, not really a man, but 19 years old, 20 years old, I was able to make my decision, and it wasn't forced to left or forced to right because you have to do this. It's like you do what you think is best for you and your family. And as a part of my backbone and how I was raised, I was like, you know, it makes sense for me to stay here and overload in classes again and graduate school a year early.
Overloading classes, I should say. I mean, your college career, when you think about it, was either basketball practice or class.
Yeah.
For 3 solid years with no breaks.
Well, Tim, we found out a good formula. I think that I stay out of trouble when I don't have breaks. And, you know, I think both my parents knew that. And me staying in school and taking 3 courses one semester and then practicing every single day, it didn't allow any margin for error. You know, my schedule was set. And that's actually how I was able to maintain my focus and, was able to actually to graduate school a year early.
Well, you, by the way, it's not unusual for a 19 to 21-year-old man to have other things to do if they're not locked into work. So
Exactly.
you were no exception there. I'll be right back with Jay Williams for more right after this. We talked about Jay Williams' accident. We didn't want to leave you in the dark because his promising NBA career came to an end after just 1 year with the Chicago Bulls after being drafted behind Yao Ming. He was in a horrific motorcycle accident. And get this, he sustained a total knee dislocation. He tore every ligament, dislocated his pelvis, ripped through a nerve in his left foot, severed an artery, tore a hamstring from the bone, and suffered pain and psychological damage that almost ended in suicide. I mean, if that's not a horrible paragraph, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Well, can I make a comment before we talk about that?
Sure.
How many times does God descend a 7'6" Chinese man upon you in the draft? Not too many times.
No.
Really, out of all the years in the draft, I had to not be the first pick in the draft.
How about never?
Never,
how about
ever. It never
never?
happens.
But I know you've used that line before, right?
Yeah, it's a good icebreaker after you go through the list of my injuries. But, for me, it was one of those moments, Tim, that, and I guess the only way I can help people relate to it is that I think we've all had moments in our life where we've done something that could have gone the opposite way. And when I talk to my friends and, or just random people who like to stop me on the street and ask me about it, like, oh, why would you do that? Because I was 21 years old and I had a lot of money and I had free time. And there was this power play that came into life for me where all of a sudden.
This motorcycle weighed 400 pounds, right?
Yeah. But it was more so I was going to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it because all of a sudden I was my own man now. And also riding a bike it paralleled to my game. I was not the tallest guy.
What do you mean? Yeah,
Well,
what's that mean?
I'm 6'1", I'm 6'2". I was built on my speed, my frame. I was powerful. I was able to get by people, and riding a bike, it kind of gave me that same exhilaration.
It made sense to you.
Yeah, I got it. I felt it. Even though I shouldn't have been doing it, you have to understand at the time, talk about it like it was 40 years ago, but in 2002, 2003, you still had Kobe Bryant riding to games on a motorcycle. You still had Michael Jordan, who was playing for the Washington Wizards, who had his own motorcycle team, who rode his bike. My head coach, Bill Cartwright, had a bike, had a Harley that he would ride on trips. So it was one of these things that you shouldn't have done it, but everybody was doing it. And you live in this world where a lot of people are afraid to tell you no.
You have said people won't let you forget it. They want you to tell the story over and over and over. It's a fascinating story because there's no telling what you would have done had you not been in an accident.
Yeah,
You'd still be playing basketball today.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Probably wouldn't be the man I am today, but I think that's the gift and the curse from it. It's the gift because it constantly serves as a reminder of where you came from and how hard you had to work to get to where you are. But then it's a curse because there are a lot of times I don't want to recall the worst day of my life.
Well, 10 years ago, you were just beginning the rehab, both physically and mentally. And we're going to save that until the next segment, if it's okay, because I'd like for you to tell our audience about that. I'll be back with Jay Williams, and we'll talk about that rehab program right after this. I'm back with Jay Williams. Now to play a little catch up, Jay Williams from the New York area, grew up in New Jersey, 3 years at Duke to get his degree. After the first year with the Chicago Bulls, second round draft choice to Yao Ming, and now he has the motorcycle accident, and the following year or 2 or 3, rehab. It must have been a very, very lonely existence during that time.
I think the only word to describe it was arduous. That's the only way I can really.
Was it more arduous mentally or physically?
I think at first, physically, it was challenging because, like, when a lady has a child, their pubic symphysis splits, right? So mine split about 6 or 7 inches, and then totally dislocated my knee, which means I tore every ligament in my knee, severed my artery, so I had to get a graft, which essentially took out a vein from my other leg and put here and flipped it the other way. And then I severed my peroneal nerve, which gives you the ability to pull your foot up and down. So as you can see right there, I got a pretty gnarly scar. I tell kids when I get out of the ocean that I got bit by a shark and they should be careful around the area. It makes me laugh, pretty funny. But yeah, it was the physical pain. And my dad's here in the studio, and he was great. He really helped me get through a lot because I had, when you have nerve damage, it literally feels as if somebody is stabbing you with a dull knife in your leg constantly. And you never know when it's going to happen. And it said it takes your body each inch per your nerve that has to heal. It takes about a month to a month and a half. So here I am. I'm having over a foot. So I had to go through that kind of pain, which obviously
How long would you say?
I mean, my nerve still hasn't came all the way back. Ended up getting a tendon transfer on my left foot. So when I think actually the muscle
tendon on the outside.
Yeah. So actually it's pretty crazy. So the muscle that you use to pull your foot inward, they cut that off the bone and they reattach that to the top of my foot. So when I walk on my left foot, I think about pulling inward, which pulls my foot up. So imagine you have to teach yourself how to walk like this. But my dad was the person kind of helping me get through stuff and massaging my leg. I mean, that's the kind of stuff though that got you addicted to things like Oxycontin and oxycodone because you didn't want to deal with the pain. Not only the pain of physically, but then you add on the mental pain because nobody else did this to me. You know, I did this to myself.
You had to come to grips with that, I would think initially.
Oh, yeah.
That you did it to yourself.
Well, I didn't come to grips with that, Tim, until way afterwards. Because the first part was just me trying to get through the physical pain. You know, trying to get through the physical pain didn't allow me time to deal with the emotional and the mental pain. And that didn't come really into
And the
later.
guilt, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
one of the worst nights of my life is, the draft that year. I just got drafted the year before. You know, I'm doing things like sitting in Michael Jordan's locker, first player to have a triple-double since Michael Jordan. Finally start to figure out the life of an NBA player, and I don't need to be friends with everybody. I can still play my way and do my thing. And then all of a sudden you're in a hospital bed and you have pins coming out of parts of your body you never thought were possible, and you're watching the Bulls while you're still in the hospital bed in ICU with your family draft another guard at the same position, another guard that you had just played against a year prior. That's when things mentally started to hit me a little bit.
I was just thinking that, you know, you win a title as a 19-year-old, your second year at Duke, and if you hadn't done that, you never would have experienced the pinnacle of a basketball season.
My sophomore year, when I had the opportunity to leave school early and to become a pro, one of the things that Coach K said to me that it really hit home. He's like, Jay, the one thing you'll realize about playing here is that you've already been a pro before you're about to become a pro.
Wow. Did you have any dreams about professionally?
Yeah, I mean, I was shaking David Stern's hand that night when I got drafted was probably one of the best nights of my life. I was, my dad, we were talking about this before.
Didn't your mom throw a party for you and have all your ex-girlfriends at the party?
The things that you really do your due diligence. I'm thoroughly, yeah.
I've never heard of that.
I've never heard that either, Tim. That makes two of us.
How many ex-girlfriends were there?
I had about 3, and it was unfortunate for my girlfriend at the time, who became my fiance later on in life. That night ended up being more about her than it was about me, but it was okay. I guess, look, My parents had a good time.
I just think
You
that's
guys right.
fabulous.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if I say fabulous.
What,
but
was it in any way awkward? I mean, here you
yeah, it was very awkward. It was my party. I'm like, well, it's my party, and I'm like trying to balance all these. Yeah, it was. Anyway,
That's classic stuff.
It was
though. I
classic
mean,
stuff.
That's just wonderful.
Well, it's in my family, so we joke about it. My dad is a little bit more passive with things. He likes to kind of watch, and then he'll formulate an opinion afterwards. Or my mother's a little bit more just gung-ho. I'm just gonna come in there and say what I want to say, and the repercussions, I'll deal with it later. So for me, there's a fair balance, right? At times I could be like my father and be like, okay, I'm gonna watch this and we'll do this for a month from now. And then other times I'm like my mom and I'm like, well, maybe I should just shut up for a second and not say anything because I'm putting my own foot in my mouth.
There's a lot of wisdom there. Isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And you know what? You always have a lot of friends when things go great, Tim. When things are going well, you have a lot of people that want to be on your team. And, well, my best friend, Dresden Balliat, my dad, my mom, the people I think that are part of my circle now are people that were there for me when I got hurt. And we had a lot of people that kind of faded to black and disappeared. And now, doing TV, those are the people that want to come back and say, oh, hey, what's going on now? Or, hey, I heard you're doing this business-wise. Can I be involved? And I'm very quick to be like, no, I don't want to have your presence in my life anymore, because if you really appreciated me for me, you would have been there in my darkest moment.
Wow. We'll be back with the final segment with Jay Williams right after this. I'm back with ESPN's Jay Williams, who recently was the subject of an article in Forbes magazine. Congratulations for that. How can you apply what's happened in your life over the last 11 years to your business future? As Forbes says, you most assuredly have a very successful business future.
Well, one of the things that I learned in school, and I owe a lot to this guy over here to my left, my father, and to Coach K, was that, and it's one of these major topics right now that we're actually dealing with the NCAA, and we're seeing this multi-billion-dollar industry going on around these athletes. And as a player, sometimes you get so lost in the moment where you're competing or you're focused on your academics that you don't see, the game sponsored by Geico on ESPN, or you don't see the fact that the NCAA sold the rights to CBS and TNT for $10.5 billion.
With a B.
With a B. You see your jersey around campus, but you don't pay attention to it. And it was people starting to bring light to the darkness for me about the business of basketball and the power of connecting and networking. And one of the things I realized, I think more towards my junior year, was that there were a lot of powerful people that wanted to do what I did. Guys that were CEOs or sitting on boards of companies that would say, hey, when you were playing and you at this moment, when you're going against Maryland, what were you thinking? And I think that's when my mind, business-wise, started to be like, well, okay. And because my father talking to me about it, well, when you're in the boardroom and you're talking to your employees about how you're going to, run this marketing campaign, how do you do that? So there was a synergy there. And I didn't see it right at first. I thought about, committing suicide and then spent some time trying to be an agent, and that didn't really work out. And then I started going to these fantasy camps where I was a coach, and I would have all these people start picking my brain just about, hey, why don't you come in, a guy named Carl Liebert, who was the CEO of 24 Hour Fitness, why don't you come in and speak to my team about some of your experiences as a basketball player? And I started seeing how they work together. A lot of their team stuff they were doing really applied to the same way that Coach K ran his team and vice versa. And just started working with him on developing some kind of, non-traditional marketing strategy. And next thing you know, kind of got a consulting deal with him. And then I started doing it with Under Armour. Then I started doing it a little bit with Mass Mutual and some other companies. And I was like, wow, this is going pretty well. And TV was serving as basketball for me, because the more I devoted myself to TV, the more my face was able to get out there to connect more dots, and it allowed me access into events that other people couldn't get into.
Last point, should college players be paid?
I don't know if they should be paid right off the bat. I think there should be some kind of money put in escrow, which could actually incentivize a player to stay and graduate. You say, hey, if you have a C+ average and you graduate, then you're entitled to a certain percentage that your program has generated over your tenure.
I like that thought. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Really
Jay
appreciate it.
Williams has been my guest and your guest. Thanks a lot.